Okay, hello everyone. I have another astrology video to share today, and this time I am going to be speaking about the astrology of Justin Trudeau, who I usually call Justin Castro just for fun, but for this video I will be calling him Justin Trudeau, not to confuse people that might not know about the whole Justin Castro conspiracy theory. Anyways, I'm feeling to share this video because I have been analyzing Justin's astrology since the beginning of this year. I did a whole Astrology of Canada webinar series back in June, which is available on my YouTube channel. I'll link it in the description of this video. And part of that series was I looked at the astrology of Justin Trudeau, very in-depth, and I've been kind of keeping up with it ever since, on and off. And now that in Canada we have this Emergency Act inquiry going on, where Justin is going to have to take the stand, and he is going to have to speak on why he invoked the Emergencies Act, a War Measures Act against the truckers. This is a very critical time for Justin. His approval rating and likable rating is very, very low in not only Canada, but also all over the world. And I find that very fascinating and interesting that we have this Prime Minister of Canada that is so disliked, possibly the most disliked leader of a country at the moment, definitely one of the top 5 for sure. So for those of you that may not know me, my name is Meg and I am a Canadian citizen, but I'm currently living in Belgium. So I'm one of the Canadians that has experienced not being in Canada at this time and hearing what people think of Justin. And I've been to Belgium over the past few years, England, France, Holland. Most of the people you talk to know Justin's shenanigans, his antics, how he's acting, and they really do not like him. So it's good that on the world stage, it is also known, a lot of people keeping up with really what's going on in alternative media, his behavior, and what's going on in Canada. So I find Justin, as an astrologer and a mystic, as a very fascinating person to look into their astrology. And after looking into his astrology, his birth chart and his transits very extensively, I am convinced of some things that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So I'm just going to start to share my screen here. Also, this is a very pivotal time for everyone on the planet, not just Justin, because we're in an eclipse season. And eclipses are the times of greatest change. We have 2 eclipse seasons every year, and this one is happening during a Scorpio season. So it's the most intense kind of eclipse we can have happening during a Scorpio season. Scorpio is the sign of death, rebirth, transformation, the dark side, secrets coming to light. And Justin has a lot of scorpionic influence in his chart, which I want to share with you guys. So yeah, I made this little mood board. This is me unlocking my creativity in here, which we'll get to that in a second. First, I want to show his birth chart. Okay, so I'm going to share with you guys some of the key points from my astrological perspective that I feel to share from his birth chart. The birth chart in astrology can also be called the natal chart. And then I also want to show his charts for this eclipse season, the eclipse for October 25th and the eclipse for November 8th. And this is very significant. Eclipses are very significant for everybody because we all have our individual eclipse charts where the eclipse hits a certain area of our birth chart. And that's the areas of our life that really get activated from the eclipses during the time of the eclipse and up to 6 months afterwards. So eclipses are a really big deal. I'll link another video in the description of this one on the Scorpio eclipse season that I did last week, if you want to learn more about that. But here I just want to focus on what's going on with Justin right now. So this is Justin's chart. And just for fun, I'll show this mood board again that I made. So this is the mood board that I made for Justin. And looking at this, this is just something fun that I made, but his chart is covered in, I'll just say it, dark energy, dark arts, a child that has been very traumatized, I believe psychologically broken down. I believe he's mind controlled. I believe he's a part of secret societies. I mean, we know he's a part of the World Economic Forum and all that stuff, but even more things like that behind the scenes. We know he's got tons of scandals that he's been a part of, that he just seems to get away with time and time again. And there's lots of conspiracy theories about him, one of them being that he is actually the son of Fidel Castro. So I'm not going to get super into that right now, but I do actually believe, my personal opinion, that Justin is not the biological son of former Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau, that we see here in this picture. I believe he is the son of Fidel Castro, the Cuban dictator. And in this picture, there's, many pictures of Margaret Trudeau, Justin's mom, and Fidel Castro, very close to each other, hugging each other, joking around. The reasons why I really believe that theory is because Justin looks exactly like Fidel. You can Google yourself, Justin Fidel Castro. And also Margaret Trudeau has talked a lot about how she really liked Fidel. She thought he was the sexiest, most charming man she'd ever met. She loved going down to Cuba and she loved Fidel Castro. So that's just one of many, many, many things that are fishy about Justin. There's really, weird stuff going on with him. I think he is acting the way he is, like a supervillain right now, because he has been traumatized, mind controlled, psychologically broken down since being a child. That he comes from one of these elite families that, if you're into conspiracies or alternative information, I'm sure you know a lot about that. He's a part of an elite family. So you guys know what I mean by that. Okay. So I want to look at his birth chart, and then we're going to get into the current astrology of Justin, this eclipse season, what's going on right now. So I'm going to try as best as possible not to make this video super long and just talk on what I think the most interesting things are about his chart that are relevant to what's going on now. So first of all, he is a Capricorn sun. Justin is a Capricorn, born on December 25th, 1971, 9:27 p.m. in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. So he's born on Christmas Day, and he's a Capricorn, 3 degrees Capricorn. And it's very interesting because a lot of the people right now that are prime ministers, presidents, really powerful leaders, people in powerful positions at the moment in the elite, a lot of them are either Scorpios or Capricorns, which is very, very interesting. And Scorpio and Capricorn are the two in astrology most what we call malefic signs. Scorpio is the sign ruled by Pluto, the planet of darkness, death, the shadow side of life, power, control, secrets, the occult. And Saturn, ruler of Capricorn, I like to call him Granddaddy Saturn, is the planet of the Lord of Karma, responsibility, success, reputation in the world, very, very high achievement, responsibility. Capricorn in its dark side can be very, very cold, because in its dark side, it can be all about just achievement and very emotionless, actually. In my personal opinion, I think Capricorn can be the most emotionless, cold-hearted sign. Nothing against Capricorns. I have my moon in Capricorn and a lot of things in Capricorn. It's just one of the shadow sides of Capricorn. Whereas Scorpio, which gets a really bad rap because it rules the dark side of life, the scary side of life, Scorpio is way more emotional than Capricorn. So Capricorns can be kind of creepy in that way when they're acting from their shadow side. It's very cold, very emotionless. It's about control, reputation, and being in a powerful position, which Justin has gotten into that powerful position by, in his life, being Prime Minister of Canada. So it doesn't surprise me that he's a Capricorn. His moon is in Aries, which is a very interesting place to have your moon, and it's in the 8th house. And we can see in Justin's birth chart that he actually has something that we call a stellium of planets in his 8th house. And some astrologers resonate with there has to be 3 planets in a sign or house for it to be stellium. Some say 4. I go with 3. So Justin has a stellium of planets in his 8th house, the house of Scorpio. And the 8th house in astrology is the areas of life that Scorpio rule. So our shadow side, crisis, trauma, secrets, joint partnerships, joint investments, inheritances. It's the secret side of life. It's also the house of sex. And, the things that we kind of do behind closed doors. But Scorpio is a very malefic sign. So when you have a stellium of planets in the 8th house and Justin's moon is there, which is his emotional self, things he's carrying emotionally, things he's feeling on the inside that he might not be expressing out to everyone. His Chiron, which is the asteroid of his innermost wounds, very sensitive place in our chart. And Mars, his drive, his life force energy, his masculine energy are in the 8th house. So right there, that shows me that this is someone who has very likely gone through abuse in some way or another in their life. And this shows up all over Justin's chart, which I'll get into, that this is someone who, from an astrological standpoint, has been abused in a very dark way, a very, very dark way by powerful people in his life, because Scorpio rules powerful people in our lives. And Scorpio is dark arts, and I do believe in secret societies, and I do believe that he has been a part of dark arts rituals. I believe he's been groomed since a child to be in the position that he's in, with many different parts of his chart. Number one, these particular planets in his 8th house. Number 2, that he has Mars opposite Pluto, the 2 rulers of Scorpio, Pluto and Mars opposite each other with Mars in the 8th house. 3, he has Moon opposite Uranus. 4, he has Algol conjunct the midheaven. I'm going to go over these, but I'm just listing these off for you guys. 5, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. 3, Sun square Pluto. And what was the other one? He has, I think he has Sun square Mars as well. So there's actually something in astrology called a T-square in his chart, which is a challenging formation of aspects to have that points towards his sun, which is his basic identity, who he is. And it's Pluto, the Mars in the 8th house, forming a T-square. It's like a triangle shaped formation towards his sun. So trauma that he's been through from the dark side weighing him down. And this is a lifelong challenge that he has to go through. It's just showing in his chart. I mentioned he has Algol conjunct his midheaven. This is very, very interesting. This is a bit more advanced astrology. Algol is something called a fixed star in the sky. So it's always at 25 degrees Taurus, but in everybody's chart, it's going to be in a different house depending on your house placements. And Algol, since ancient astrology, has been called the demon star. And if you see pictures of Algol, it actually looks really creepy and it has a really weird vibe to it. And Algol in the chart, when it's in negative, challenging placements, can show very intense things about a person. And Justin has Algol conjunct, so right on top of his midheaven. Now, it's not exact, it's 2 degrees off, but this is still a very, very strong position aspect to have. Justin's midheaven is at 27 degrees Taurus, and Algol is 25 degrees Taurus. So it's just 2 degrees off his midheaven. So it's still very strong influence to have over the whole chart. Whenever someone in astrology has anything conjunct their midheaven, this is the top middle part of the chart where the midheaven is the noon position of the sun in the sky, because the birth chart is like our Earth's perspective of the sky out in front of us. And when we look outside in front of us, you know, right in the top middle part of the sky is the midheaven, the noon position, where the sun is at its height, it's at its power. So anything that is there in the chart is very, very powerful. And having Algol there, now there's a lot of people who are going to have, like Justin has, Algol conjunct the midheaven, which you would have if you're a 3 degrees Virgo rising, because the rising sign creates the house positions. But it's the combination of so many darker things showing up in the chart that having this as well, it's like, it's not a coincidence. There's a pattern in his chart of dark energy, dark arts, power and control issues. When someone has Algol conjunct the midheaven, they need to be careful of power and control issues in their life, being over controlling, having manipulation issues. What else does he have? This Mars in his 8th house is in opposition to his Pluto in the second house. Now, it's not an exact opposition, it's 3 degrees off, but this is still a strong influence. And when you have this, this is another thing showing someone that has been abused, someone that, which I believe is what he's doing to Canada. He's acting out the trauma that has been done to him since he was a child onto Canada, whether he's conscious of that or not conscious of that. Because I do believe that he is actually being mind controlled by elites right now. This is, opposition is not a easy, positive type of aspect to have. It's a challenging aspect to have. And Pluto is the planet of power, control, powerful people in our lives, right? And the dark side. Opposite his Mars, his energy, his life force, his drive, his confidence. So something happened to him since he was a child, because his Pluto is in the second house, which does show early life, things that happen in early life when we have planets there, where his power was taken away from him. And 8th house in an abusive way. So I do believe people around him, and I won't say any particular names, powerful people around him, he was abused by, he was manipulated by, they took his power away. And he is acting out of a place of what other people, powerful people around him, want him to do, not what he actually wants to do, if that makes sense. So another intense aspect that he has is his sun is square Pluto. And his sun square Pluto is very, very strong aspect he has in his chart. It's not exact, but it's 1 degree off of being exact. So this is a very big influence. And when you have sun square Pluto, with the combination of all this other darker things showing up in the chart, and this is really not normal. Like if you're someone who doesn't know anything about astrology and you're listening to me doing this video right now, this is not a coincidence at this point. He has a lot of things going on in this chart showing being influenced by dark energy. So the sun square Pluto, when you have that, this is someone that from an early age had a very powerful father. And it can also denote having a hidden father, sun square Pluto. Not always, but it can show that, which it's interesting that there's the, theory that his dad is Fidel. There's a major importance of power, once again, power and control. If you have this aspect, there can be family histories with this aspect of things that are taboo, such as criminality, organized crime, sexual abuse, misconduct, psychological issues, which is interesting because if you know anything about his mom, Margaret Trudeau actually does have, I think it's bipolar disorder, if I'm not mistaken. She does have major psychological issues. And there's also another aspect in his chart, moon opposite Uranus exact, which the moon in our chart can show things about our mother. When you have this, there's usually either psychological issues with the mother, mental health issues with the mother, or a very quirky, unique, offbeat mother, which Margaret Trudeau definitely was, if you know anything about her. And back to the sun square Pluto, when someone has this, this is very intense relationship with the father and powerful male figures in that person's life. And the sun shows our basic identity in our chart, but it can also represent things about the father. And being in square to Pluto, this can show a father that was engaging in some darker things in life, which, if you have heard, there's many people that have accused Pierre Trudeau of abusing them in these elite secret societies. That's not new information that I'm sharing. There's a lot of people that have talked about that. And I think Justin was involved in that, because a lot of the people, there's one lady called Kathy O'Brien. I'll put the link to a movie that she just put out. She's a survivor of these elite abuse networks. She mentioned Pierre Trudeau by name. And she's not the only one. So if you want to learn more about that information, I'll put that in the description of this video. It's also very interesting that with his sun, it is at 3 degrees, which this is another kind of advanced astrological practice called the degree theory, which it was invented by the late and great Nikola Stojanovic, who passed away last year, unfortunately. But he invented this thing in astrology called degree theory, where every degree is associated with a sign, and there's certain attributes to that degree. And the 3rd degree is a Gemini degree. And Gemini is the sign in astrology that rules, it's symbolized by the twins. And a lot of the time when you have something in 3 degrees, it means things that that planet symbolizes doubled. So I find that very interesting, because this is his sun, which represents his father, being doubled. So if the Fidel Castro conspiracy is true, that would make sense, because he had 2 fathers, Pierre and Fidel. So that is very, very interesting. So yeah, this sun square Pluto is not an easy aspect to have, in combination with all this other, I'm just going to say, dark influence on the chart. Is there anything else from this birth chart that I feel like sharing? Yeah, I just wanted to show you guys how many intense, darker things there are. Now, I will be fair to Justin, and I will share that he does have some very positive aspects, which is very, very interesting. It's really trippy, because he's got this really dark influence over his chart, but then at the same time has these 2 aspects that are quite positive. And those 2 aspects are Venus sextile Neptune and his sun trine his ascendant. So I'm going to talk about these. And these are what we call in astrology major aspects. So these are his strongest aspects, and the aspects are relationships between the planetary positions in Justin's birth chart. So Venus, the planet of beauty and abundance, and Venus is the ruler of Taurus and Libra. It's the arts and beauty, extravagance, luxury. It's one of the most benefic planets, is in sextile to Neptune, the spiritual, dreamy planet, ruler of Pisces, that rules, magic and the dream world and fantasy type things. Venus and Neptune are sextile each other in Justin's chart. And I put this little picture here. When your prime minister looks like a Disney prince. So when someone has Venus sextile Neptune, they are likely to be very, very good looking. And it is often described as, over the top, like fantasy looks to them, like a princess or a prince. And how many times have we heard, if you're a Canadian, you know this for sure, Have we heard Justin been described in the media or even in day-to-day life by people we know as a prince? He's the Prince of Canada. He's like a beautiful prince, you know. I've heard that said over and over again. I even said that when Justin first came around the scene. I will admit that the first time Justin came around the scene, when he was in the election for Prime Minister of Canada, the first time where he won, I voted for Justin Trudeau. And I know a lot of people now, like me in my age group, I'm 29 right now, you know, people in their 20s, 30s, that Justin to us looked like this fantasy prince that was beautiful and sexy, and he was saying all the right things, and he wanted to legalize marijuana, also ruled by Neptune, drugs, hallucinogenics. You know, he tricked us. Him and the people above him controlling us tricked us with this very good-looking person that wanted to legalize marijuana. That's, if you're not a Canadian and you're wondering how this person with no political experience, just because he's the son of Pierre Trudeau, ex-Prime Minister of Canada, became Prime Minister, it's because of that. It's because he was young, he was hip looking, he was sexy, and he wanted to legalize marijuana, which he did. So this aspect gives him good looks in astrology. It's really trippy and villainous in a way, because he has all this dark stuff and influence on his chart, but then Venus sextile Neptune and Sun trine ascendant. Now, if you've seen the movie Shrek, this is the Prince Charming character from Shrek. So I just put that picture there again, because Sun trine ascendant, similar to Venus sextile Neptune, it can make someone very sexy, very appealing, very confident. It's a positive energy to have Sun trine ascendant. So it's very interesting with Justin, because it's not like every single part of his chart is negative and bad. He's got a couple really positive aspects here. And I have spoken with some friends about different predictions and theories about what we think could end up happening with Justin. And as much as a Canadian personally, I feel a lot of anger and frustration towards Justin for many different reasons. I know a lot of us Canadians are feeling that way. Even though I feel that as an astrologer looking at his chart, I do have to say that there are some positive aspects, which is very strange, because there's very dark things at the same time, which I know I keep saying over and over again. So I do kind of believe that there is a possibility that Justin may snap out of the mind control that he is under, and at the end of the day, try to do good, try to make up for what he's done. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure. I think that that is a possibility here. And yeah, I do think that that is a possibility here. We will see if that does happen. It would be nice if he could wake up from how he's acting and try to, you know, better himself. I mean, on the spiritual level, isn't that what we want for everyone, to step into love and forgiveness and peace? So yeah. And another thing kind of showing a positive influence over his chart is that Justin has Jupiter, the luckiest planet of them all, in its home sign of Sagittarius at 21 degrees, which is also a critical degree. He's got a lot of critical degrees going on in his chart. Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, Uranus, and anything that you, and also the moon. And like I said, anything you have at a critical degree, it really amplifies the attributes of that planet. So with his Uranus also being in a critical degree, Uranus is the planet of shocks, surprises, rebelliousness, doing things in a different way. He could shock us all and have a complete change of heart. I mean, that would take a total miracle. I'm not trying to be bypassing of his actions at all, because trust me, I am really fed up with him and I really don't want him to be our prime minister anymore. But I do think there's a possibility that he could really shock the world in some way, really completely change and possibly step into the light, which would be really, really trippy if that did happen. So yeah, he's got some positive aspects, but at the same time, really challenging things going on as well. So it's not just the Sun square Pluto, the Pluto opposite Mars, the Uranus opposite the moon. He's also got Neptune square his ascendant. And the ascendant in astrology is the part of our chart that shows how we show up in the world, how we show up on the world stage, and a lot about our self-confidence and individuality. And Neptune is the planet of ruler of Pisces. Neptune in its shadow side rules illusions, disillusionment, not being grounded in reality whatsoever, living in a total fantasy land or being manipulated by people and their illusions and projecting that outwards. So when you have Neptune square ascendant, and this is an exact aspect for him, very, very strong. This is someone that can be very easily manipulated and controlled by others. So this just also confirms with the Pluto opposite Mars, Sun square Pluto, someone that has very likely been traumatized, abused, unfortunately, and does not have a clear mind, does not express themselves clearly out in the world, really from themselves. It's what other people influencing them want them to do. And when you have something that's a challenging aspect like this, it doesn't mean like it has to be like this forever, that it's the be all end all. This is something that can be worked on through shadow work, through self-development, through therapy, through healing. But we can definitely see at the present time how Justin is acting that this makes a lot of sense. He doesn't answer questions from the heart. We see he doesn't speak from the heart. A lot of the times when he's being interviewed or in Parliament, he doesn't answer any questions directly. It's very Piscean, it's very Neptunian. It's very, okay, you're asking me this, but I'm going to go in this way and not actually answer the question you're asking me. And I'm going to bring you in this different direction that has nothing to do with the question you just asked me. So it's very clouded. And I think he's really expressing this aspect very strongly at the moment. I talked about his moon opposite Uranus. Moon can show his mom and his emotional self. And Uranus, the planet of shocks, surprises, the rebelliousness within us, very quirky, unique, individualistic. And Margaret Trudeau definitely is that way, which moon opposite Uranus, that has had an effect on Justin, because I think she also went through some kind of trauma with the powerful men, people around Justin, and that lack of stability in the mother mentally has affected also Justin's mental health. And this is exact aspect, very, very strong. Yeah, very interesting that that shows so clearly in who his mother is. And she also had that Uranian side where she hung out with rock stars and was very, supposedly hooked up with a lot of different people, and had affairs on Pierre and did things in a very hippie kind of bohemian way, which is very Uranian. Yeah, I talked about this T-square here that Justin has between the Sun, Pluto, and Mars. It's, yeah, very, very challenging to have that Sun, Pluto, Mars T-square that he has. This is someone who has really been through a lot in their lives, and I think it's really easy for, if you're a Canadian or just anyone in the world looking at Justin, it's very easy for us to be angry at him, which is totally natural, and slag him off and whatever. But at the core of what's going on, this is a child who has been deeply traumatized, abused, in my opinion, in a very deep way. And that is why they are acting the way they are acting. And it's not somebody, who's mentally stable, who is even maybe really in their body. He could be very disconnected, disassociated from reality at this time, for sure. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Justin's current astrology with this eclipse season. So, as I said, very, very intense eclipse season that is happening during Scorpio season, Sun in Scorpio. So this is going to be really powerfully intense for everyone, and everyone individually. This eclipse is going to be hitting a different area of your chart. So for Justin, the new moon partial solar eclipse in Scorpio on October 25th is activating his third house. And the third house in astrology represents the areas of our life that have to do with our local neighborhood, our siblings, our family in our neighborhood, where we grew up, communication, public speaking, which is really interesting because it is during this time that he is going to have to get on the stand at this Emergency Act inquiry and speak on the stand and really have to answer questions on why he enacted the emergency order, which we know that was done illegally. So he really doesn't have a leg to stand on. And this is going to hit him really hard. And I believe that this could be the nail that hits the head, in that this could be the end of him being Prime Minister of Canada by the end of the year. I'm really feeling that. So in Justin's third house, in his birth chart, he has Black Moon Lilith, which is this moon with the cross below it. And Justin's Black Moon Lilith is in the sign of Scorpio. It's in his third house. And when you have Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio, the Black Moon is an asteroid in astrology that symbolizes our dark, wild side, some of our wild things that we might be into that we don't share a lot. It's a very sexual part of our chart. Lilith is a dark goddess in ancient astrology that overcame sexual abuse and trauma and stepped into her wildness and her power. So it can show us in the chart a lot of the powerful attributes that we have naturally, but it can also show parts of our shadow side, things that we might like to act out or ways that we might have been traumatized. So again, we see something with a Scorpio influence for Justin, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. This could be very intense trauma, wounds being done to him, possible sexual abuse, power, control issues since childhood. And Black Moon Lilith also holds secrets that we keep. And that is in Justin's third house. So that is being activated at this time for him with this eclipse. And not only is there that, but Pluto, transit Pluto, so where Pluto currently is right now, is exactly squaring Justin's natal birth chart Lilith in the third house. So it's already very intense that this eclipse is activating his third house, which is where Lilith is, but no. Pluto, the destroyer of lies, the ruler of secrets, the ruler of the dark side, is squaring his Lilith, which is a really rare thing to have because Pluto in astrology, it's the farthest away planet. It takes over 200 years to do its solar orbit cycle. I think it's, if I'm correct, over 220 or 240 years, something like that. So think about the chances of this happening right now while the Emergency Act inquiry is happening. He's going to be on the stand where he did do something illegal, criminality ruled by Scorpio, Pluto, and he is going to have to speak, third house, about it publicly, third house, in his local neighborhood where he was born in Ottawa, third house. So I personally am feeling and predicting with this that not only is it going to be uncomfortable for him to have to get up on the stand during this time, and we don't know the exact date yet, from my understanding, when he'll be getting on the stand, but this is not only going to be uncomfortable, but secrets, information is going to come to light through this trial inquiry that I think most people are not aware of yet. And I think it's going to be something really dark and possibly traumatizing for Canadians to hear. And it has to do with his conduct of why he invoked the Emergencies Act. Another thing when you have Pluto square Black Moon Lilith is adversaries, enemies, like trying to mess with you, coming forward, trying to do something to you. And, there's a lot of people against Justin Trudeau in Canada, in the world stage right now, and rightfully so because of how he's acting. He's, acting like a little dictator, crazy person, right? But this is hidden enemies. This is people that not everybody knows is his enemy. So I have a little bit of a feeling that someone, a part of the Liberal Party, or someone who we may have thought would have been on Justin's side, is going to speak out against him during this inquiry, during this trial. That might be how the scandalous information comes out, and that will be very, very shocking for people. Someone that we didn't think would speak against Justin will likely speak out against Justin. And it's also a time where he may be feeling really kind of paranoid and really acutely aware of people that are against him around him. Which I have heard from some personal sources that he is scared for his well-being and has people eat his food before he eats it and all this crazy stuff because he thinks people are out to get him at this time. So yeah, that Pluto square Lilith in the third house where this eclipse is activating is not really a nice, easygoing thing to have. It's positive in the long run because he's going to have to face whatever shadow side stuff he has done to Canada. It's going to come up during this time. And, Pluto is the destroyer of illusions. So this is going to be very, very interesting what comes up at this time. And as I said, the third house is his local community, which is Ottawa. And that's where this inquiry trial is taking place. The third house is also siblings. So I do know that Justin has a half brother called Kyle Kemper. If you've ever heard of him, he is a total freedom lover, freedom loving Canadian, and he speaks out against Justin. There may be something that, really big that Kyle Kemper speaks on more publicly. He could come out in this way during this time. The third house is also siblings, so there could be something very important with Justin's siblings that come up during this time. So yeah, he also has, that's very interesting, his transit Jupiter conjunct his natal Mars, which, as I said, in his birth chart, his Mars is opposite Pluto. So Jupiter is opposite Pluto transit aspect right now. When you have, Jupiter is the most positive, benefic, luckiest planet. It's the ruler of Sagittarius. It represents abundance and luck and prosperity and, just lucky. It's lucky Jupiter, right? But it's very different because it's on top of, it's conjunct his Pluto opposite Mars. So usually when you have Jupiter conjunct something, it's a very positive thing. But in my personal opinion, I think this is not a very positive thing because Jupiter, even though it's the lucky, optimistic, luckiest planet, it's the planet of expansion. And Jupiter makes bigger, expands whatever it touches. And it is touching exactly this Pluto opposite Mars, which is going to bring up a lot of whatever he went through as a child, a lot of his personal control issues. Pluto square Mars is also anger, uncontrollable anger. So he could have a freak out during this time publicly when he's on the stand or in an interview in a public manner. He could really freak out and it really won't look good on him. Also, Jupiter conjunct Mars is over risk taking, being overly confident and maybe exposing too much information or doing something silly because you were overly confident. So I think that's also going to come up during this time. And at this time, he also has transit Saturn over his sixth house, which is the house of day-to-day work and his physical overall well-being. So, and I know I've heard other people say this too, but I feel like there is something going on with his physical health that we may not be aware of during this time. Maybe we won't become aware of it. But when you have Saturn transit your sixth house, this could be health issues coming up, which could be minor or major health issues coming up. And Saturn transit the sixth house, Saturn ruler of karma, is, hitting his day-to-day work. So if you've been acting in a negative way in day-to-day work in your workplace and Saturn comes around, Lord of karma, there's going to be, karma might kick your butt a little bit, so to speak. So things could be revealed. You could lose a position that you're in. You could lose a job potentially. So this is you know, those areas that are getting hit very hard. Now, he does have some positive aspects happening, but I think the challenging things are kind of outweighing that at this time, and this inquiry is happening. It's also the year of his exact Chiron return. So we can see in his 8th house is his Chiron. And I believe it was February 8th, 2022 is when he had his exact Chiron return, which only happens every 50-ish years for a person. You usually only have one Chiron return in your life unless you live to be over 100 years old. And Chiron is the asteroid of our innermost wounds. It's the wounded healer asteroid. And when we have a Chiron return, it can be really big themes around our wounds coming up to the surface. It has a lot to do with our inner child. So this is not an easy time for Justin at all. I think he's going through a lot of inner and outer turmoil. There's a lot of things coming to the surface. That Chiron return happened exactly February 8th, which was when the trucker convoy was happening. So yeah, and his Chiron is in Aries, which is all about having your power taken away as a child and feeling like you can't be in your power for whatever reason. So that's really coming up for him right now. The second eclipse in this eclipse season is happening on November 8th, and it's a full moon total lunar eclipse in the sign of Taurus. And this is really intense full moon eclipse during Scorpio season. And this is really interesting because his full moon eclipse is activating his 9th house, which is the house of Jupiter, Sagittarius. You know, Jupiter and Sagittarius, it's the lucky sign and planet. It rules optimism, higher learning, travel, foreign places, and people. So I find this very interesting that this is his house that's going to get activated with this eclipse, because this is full moon eclipse. So it's about letting go, shedding the past, what no longer serves, and what needs to be the focus moving forward for the next 6 months for him, because eclipse energy lasts for up to 6 months after the eclipse. And, you know, it's foreign places, it's higher learning, it's also spiritual discovery, philosophy, self-development. This could be where Justin, one thing is he wakes up out of the mind control that he's under. That could be one thing that happens. Another thing is that he has to go to a foreign place. He moves abroad or goes on a very long trip somewhere, or takes a leave of absence and goes somewhere in a different country. It's also the 9th house, higher learning, our relationships with teachers. So people that might be an influence on him, there could be changes that happen there. And this is also the house where his algol is, the demon star, if you guys remember me saying that. So that's also getting activated during this time. And he also has his natal Black Moon Lilith exactly square transit Black Moon Lilith. So Black Moon Lilith is really working on Justin right now. Secrets being revealed, shame coming up, guilt coming up, and it's going to be exposed publicly because that first eclipse is hitting his 3rd house of his local neighborhood. And that 9th house is expansion, the outer world, foreign places, foreign people, world news, you know. So very interesting to see if he does go somewhere foreign indefinitely. It's also 9th house is your philosophy getting altered. And like I said, spiritual awakening. So, you know, as much as I don't like Justin Trudeau, I do want everybody on a spiritual level to heal. So hopefully he, you know, maybe he'll go to India with the yogis and focus on healing after all the trauma that he's inflicted on Canada. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So yeah, there's a lot going on for him. And that I could go on and on and on about a lot of other things, but I just wanted to make this video as brief as possible. And I'm sure I'll maybe do more videos on Justin and definitely on the Astrology of Canada. I will put the links in the description of this video of my Astrology of Canada series, where I talk about the birth chart of Canada. I do a very long lecture on that. I talk about the current astrology of this year, the solar return chart of Canada for 2022 to 2023. And yeah, I also do one-on-one astrology consultations. I'm offering eclipse readings at this moment. So if you're interested in that, I'll put the information for my one-on-one offerings in the description of the video. Anyways, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that information. And if you have anything to share, please comment below in the comment section of this video. And I really think it's important that with someone like Justin, it is, as much as he frustrates us and angers us, if you're a spiritual person at all, I think it is important to be praying for him and his soul at this time, that he steps into the light. And yeah, because I think he's someone that's going through a lot of inner turmoil and pain and projecting that outwards. And that's why he's acting the way he's acting. It's nothing personal towards us Canadians. It's his own stuff going on. And with this Emergency Act inquiry that's happening, there's going to be some really big information that comes out about him, that comes to light. And he himself might hang himself, so to speak, not literally, but, you know, metaphorically, by saying something or doing something. I spoke to a friend the other day who said to me that they had a dream that, yeah, they felt he was going to metaphorically hang himself during this inquiry, because they really don't have legs to stand on why they illegally invoked this Emergency Act. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, please put it in the comments below, and I'll put my information for my one-on-one astrology consultations if any of you are interested in that. And happy eclipse season. Lots of love.